Andy Levist III. And so if there's any problem with the panel, he'll sue. And he works for Italpina's Europe-Asian Design and Eco-Development Corporation. Also got Renaldo Santiago, who's managing partner of Macro, consulting structural engineers here in the Philippines. Donald Choi, who's managing director of the Nanfeng Development Limited in Hong Kong. And back again. Second day is Romello Nati, who is the architect from IT in the Philippines. So over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. So as it was said, I've been given the honor of moderating your panel today. My name is Jose Luis. Please call me Jojo. So I'll read to you from the program. It says, the stereotype has been that green buildings cost more money, yet eco-friendly buildings do not have to cost a lot and they don't have to be high-tech. Is sustainable building an option for low-cost housing? Take a step closer to a whole new technology in eco-friendly but affordable homes. So let's ask our panelists today if that's true at all, or if it's if it is in fact a trend that we should see in the coming future. So maybe the first thing that we can ask our panelists is to define these terms. So what are the definitions really of sustainable and eco-friendly and low cost? Does it mean different things in different places? And my favorite word that's been used, green. What is green? So, Mr. Choi, should we begin with you?
Let me start. I think those terms are interrelated, but not exactly the same. Sustainability obviously is looking for a sustainable solution that is on a long-term basis, while low cost may be just looking at the initial capital cost, etc. Again, I think when we look at affordable housing, we really need to look at the life cycle cost, and that means that we need to have a balance between the initial capital cost as well as the long-term operating cost. There is no point in building very cheaply while the maintenance cost will transfer to the eventual tenant and so on. And eco-friendly green, again, I think we acknowledge that our planet resources, they are limited. We have been using up our future generation resources, and that is unethical in a sense. We really need to ensure that we are not overspending in the sense of borrowing from the future generation. For developer, it is a hard balance. But in Hong Kong as well as I think in the rest of the world, we are coming around to be more conscious about how we use our resources effectively and ensure that our development will not become a burden for the future generation.
From my point of view, sustainability it's a more holistic term than green. I agree. It's everybody now is green. Sustainable means to be. We have to achieve economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. When a project achieves these three goals, I would say it's a sustainable project. And I agree with my colleague that it's not enough to build cheap, but the construction has to be has to have an affordable maintenance, because if not, we transfer the cost to the end users, which is not right.
Just adding to what my colleagues here have said, actually sustainability is a shared responsibility between the present and future generations. With regards to the structural aspect of sustainability, I guess I would say that the structural alone is sustainable because of it is made up of concrete and steel materials that we commonly use in our construction. The question is, what other types of materials do we adapt or replace for this concrete and steel so that we can achieve a sustainable kind of structure?
So there was an interesting point made there about short-term efficiency versus long-term efficiency. For example, saving money in the short term isn't really savings if it means that you spend more as you live through the life of the building. what are some examples, maybe, maybe Engineer Santiago, you can help us with this, but what are some examples of short-term sustainability in terms of construction, and is this mutually exclusive with longer-term sustainability?
Actually, as I've said, if we are to discuss about sustainability, as sustainability is defined, it is the needs of the present that we meet, that that we do not jeopardize the future generations, that the needs of their own. So I would say that my personal speaking with regards to structural, like for example, if we are constructing a steel type structure, what would I suggest? What would I, as a structural engineer, suggest to replace it with regards to sustainability? Is using some type of, for example, aluminum type of framing system in lieu of a structural rolled steel material. So, with regards to the cost of that, I would say that there's a big difference with regards costing a structural steel in lieu of a aluminum structural framing system. It's like that.
So, would you, again, maybe we can put it to all three of our panelists. We mentioned before how certain words are overused, green, sustainable, and as we're trying to figure out what they mean, would you say that sustainability has gone mainstream now? Would you say that everyone is sustainable? It just seems that it's so easy to put these words on our websites, on our packaging, and it seems that they appear in everything from real estate to airline tickets to packaging in the grocery store. So, what do you think should be next in being cutting edge in terms of sustainability and environmental friendliness?
Well, I think, in the recent years, education plays a large part in our awareness. That is actually very good, because I think it really needs to come from the heart of the users, consumers, demanding such energy efficient or sustainable product. Developers, governments actually are following the society wish to provide such products. Again, in Hong Kong, government has initiated various regulations requiring the monitoring as well as auditing of building energy use, and that has played a large part into creating the next generation of better products.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the most important thing is to have a different lifestyle. Means everyone in our everyday life can reduce our impact on the environment, consuming less water, less power. So as I said yesterday in my presentation, it's more a thinking model that we have to change more than, because the rest is just a reflection of what we think. Everything we build is before has been thought. So I like to say, we usually hear we have to leave a better planet to our children. I would say we have to leave better children to our planet. Means let's change the way our kids or our like you said, the way they think about the environment.
Yes, I agree. But a structural building made of concrete and steel is sustainable in itself, as I've said before, because concrete and steel is eco-friendly already. But considering the long-term sustainable building, I would say that if you compute the operations cost induced by having an eco-friendly building, the bottom line is you would still have a very large savings in terms of energy, water, and everything and all that stuff.
So there were two very interesting points made there about education, about changing the way that people think. But in your experience as developers, how do you educate your market? What are the interfaces that you use? Advertising, or is it more than that? And what really is the message that you send?
I think very tactical tools is really tell them the benefits. Obviously, financial benefits is one of the key considerations of all the users and consumers. If we can, point them to why certain features are being incorporated into the design, and that will save them in the long term, then they are much more eager to accept such approach. For example, I mean, we talk about flexibility of design. A family grows in size, and if the design is not flexible enough, then they need to move from one apartment to another as the life cycle changes. That actually involves additional moving costs, a lot of fit-out costs, etc. If the partition within the unit itself, more flexible design with sliding door, partition, etc., that would actually create certain flexibility. In Hong Kong, air conditioning use one of the major power consumption, and if we can insulate our building better, yes, that may cost a little bit more at the very beginning, but again, on the long-term life cycle cost, that would be recoverable and actually would be much better. With all the mechanical insulation, obviously, that could replace a good design with cross ventilation and other features that actually make use of the natural element. And that is something that I think we stress to the architect, and also we try to tell our customer.
Yes, in our personal experience with the building we have done in Cagayan de Oro, we are experienced now that we have a spontaneous creation of a community. People who have same ideas and same similar lifestyle, and again to make people interested in sustainability, you have to make it also profitable for them to be sustainable. Like my colleague said, if they see that an end user can see that he can have better air, nice temperature, and nice natural light, and at the end of the month he has a lower electric bill, lower water bill, he will appreciate that, because he is going back to nature, and at the same time he saves money. So at the end, the market is the one that decides if what we are doing is good or not, since we are developers, we are entrepreneurs. So I think the combination between profit and sustainability is the key.
Mr. Choi, you mentioned something interesting about air conditioning, because maybe that's something that we have very closely in common with Hong Kong. It's the reason we're still in this room at the moment. I suppose in the Philippines it's also one of the major consumers of electricity. But apart from these environmental factors, like what's needed and what is consumed, I'm interested in how your experiences differs between different countries that you work in, from Hong Kong to mainland China to the US. Are there differing ideas of what sustainability is, or are there different messages that you send depending on where you are?
Well, I think it's a cultural issue as well as actually the stage of economic development. When I first went to China in the 1980s, I mean, air conditioning was not really normal provision at all. I mean, they were still experiencing brownouts, and electricity supply was not sufficient. And people, don't wear jackets. They open their windows, and light bulb are normal. But now you go to China, if you don't have air conditioning, well, it's almost unacceptable. Again, that may not be a good thing at all. I mean, yes, we have been pampered with comfort, but again, there's no point in turning down the air conditioning because the culture, the business etiquette allow or require us to wear suits. I mean, I should take off this jacket and then everybody have a lighter dressing, clothing, and then we can turn the air conditioning lower or turn it off. I mean, it really is a cultural thing. The whole society needs to move together to enable, we have a sustainable community and we're using our energy and limited resource, effective and efficient way.
Maybe we can ask the same question to architect Nati. We compare China and the US, but what about Cagayan de Oro in Manila? How different is it from the capital to secondary cities or whatever you might want to call these regional hubs? Do you find that the market behaves in a similar way, or do you communicate this message of environmental friendliness in the same way there as you would here?
What I noticed in this last 6 years I've been in the Philippines is that in the secondary cities, or how Filipino calls them, provinces, they look at Manila as a referral point, as a landmark, as a role model. Maybe they didn't experience too much the aggressiveness of big city like Manila, where again the environment is quite polluted, a lot of traffic, etc. So we are trying to offer them a different model. We are telling them, you are the model that maybe Metro Manila should follow. I mean, in secondary city we still have a better environment, and so that's why we are interested in developing secondary city, because they still have the time to develop better cities and taking advantage from the, I would say, mistakes or cultural mistakes or development mistakes that have been done in the mega cities. That's my thought about it. Yeah.
So maybe the secondary cities still have a little bit more space to not commit the same mistakes as were committed before.
Absolutely, I think yes.
So on that note, I wonder what will be done differently in the future, and that sort of goes back to something that you mentioned, Engineer Santiago. You said sustainability. What does sustainability mean? Well, concrete is sustainable because I build it today; it's still there tomorrow. The same thing with steel bars; it's still there, next week. But do you foresee a breakthrough in terms of materials, chemical engineering? Do you think that future generations will be using something other than concrete and steel? Is it possible?
There is a possibility because like cement, it's made up of nowadays cement is made of fly ash, and like before that it is made of something else, like from limestone or something. So I guess with the innovations and the common and people are becoming knowledgeable and adverse with regards to sustainability. I think in the future, yes, there will be some advances with regards to a replacement for steel or concrete.
Maybe we can go to some concrete examples now from the developer's point of view, Architect Matthew, Mr. Choi. Can you give us some examples of what really you do in terms of design or in terms of different ways of building that would make your projects more eco-friendly or green, quote unquote? And also, does it really make your margins thinner, or does it have anything?
Well, one initiative in Hong Kong is to use fabric panel for external enclosure. Again, that actually stems from the labor cost has increased tremendously, and then if a lot of the building components could be made in usually southern China because of the space, the factory set up the production cost because of the standardization and efficiency of the production line actually make the product even with transportation cost cheaper than in situ construction. So we are utilizing a lot of those technology prefab components, and that actually helped us to lower our costs rather than increasing our construction costs. So that is one example that has been quote and has been used quite successfully in Hong Kong.
In our case, we focus more in the software than in the hardware. I try to explain that. In order to maintain our construction costs affordable and so the price for the customer affordable, we focus more in the design stage. Means that our building construction costs are quite similar to a comparable building without our green features. Our green features are passive green features, means we are not adding too many technological stuff in our building, but it's more about having the design conceptualized in such a way that the building performs better. How do we do that? For example, in the Philippines, again, around 60% of energy consumption, I think like in Hong Kong, is for aircon. So if we increase natural ventilation, we can have a reduced need of aircon, which means lower consumption of energy. In terms of water, we are doing water recycling, also now in the new project rain harvesting. And so let's say that the design of the building is done in such a way that the building is not expensive in terms of construction, can be built using manpower outsourced from the place, so we don't have to import material, but the only thing we import is know-how, which is much less affordable. So we are shifting our way of thinking. We are not thinking about materials, we are more thinking about methodology of design. And this is really helping to build in an affordable way. As a matter of fact, our building in Cagayan de Oro costs less than our competitors around. Of course, in order for us to build a niche, we decided from the very beginning to do not focus only on profit. Profit, of course, is important. I mean, it's the foundation of every entrepreneur, but it cannot be the only driving force. I mean, so as a company, we are ready to lose a little profit, which is okay.
Having said that, we began the session by noting that the stereotype has been that green buildings cost more money. But do you think that's fair to say, or why is it being said, or are there mistakes that have been made? Do you think in greenifying buildings in the wrong ways that don't really make financial sense?
I think it's the definition of cost. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the session, I mean, are we talking about short-term cost, or are we talking about the life cycle cost? Now we are at the beginning of the green revolutions. Obviously, some of the technology are still developing, they haven't been perfect yet. So there may be additional capital costs at the beginning. But as the efficiency and technology develop, obviously that will drive the capital cost down. Also, when we look at the whole building cycle, the life cycle cost, I'm quite confident that the cost of green building, will be much lower than what we built, on traditional technology and traditional building delivery process.
Yes, from a designer's point of view, I would say that a green building is not costly, because as a designer, we see and design the building for its long term and life cycle. So as I've said, in the long run, having a sustainable building would incur more potential savings than thinking on a initial point of view on being a developer. Maybe
one last question before we go to Q&A. Is is it possible to retrofit existing buildings to make them energy efficient or environmentally friendly? And how much more would that cost if the building already exists and then you add a solution on top of it?
Yes, it's possible. Has been done. Actually, we have done that. The first thing is to assess the load requirement of the building. Means the building most probably has all the devices, all the equipment like all the appliances like lights or aircon and things and things like that. So we have to replace them. Then whenever it's possible, you again increase natural ventilation, you increase shading in the facade, and this can be done quite easily. I mean, it's doable. And at the end, we can also check if it's possible to apply photovoltaic panels or other kind of renewable energy. I mean, devices that can produce renewable energy. Again, the most common is photovoltaic panels. So yes, it's possible, and I would say also profitable in the medium term.
Okay, well, thank you to our panelists. Maybe we can move on to question and answer now. If anyone has any questions for any of our panelists. Yes?
It's my role to ask questions. I mean, do we have many numbers that can actually justify some of the assumptions that we have about how much more, how much less? What's the long-term cost? Are there any studies underway to work this through?
We have some figures from our property managers since we also do the property management side for some of the long-term investment projects. Usually, I mean, for office building, that payback period probably is somewhere around 7 years.
I just want to clear things. Okay. When we say affordable, yes, affordable housing, it's very relative because what is affordable here in the Philippines may not be affordable in somewhere else. But there's when we say a low-cost housing, there's already a peg amount, right? So the next, it begs the question: is a sustainable green structure or housing? Is there really a green, sustainable, low-cost housing? Because there's a stereotype that green structure is costlier. Why? Because the first idea comes into mind if you're said green is using use of solar panels, solar tubes, everything. But is there really a low-cost housing that we can call a green or sustainable?
I would say Bahay Kubo is very sustainable, but it's very cheap.
Yeah.
So that's an example. I mean, again, it's not about technology, it's about, from a continued design and performance of the building, of the house, etc. Then it's, I think, difficult to categorize and say the cost is going to be this. I think it's I think every developer is doing, developers who are interested in delivering sustainable products are doing efforts in order to reduce cost. That's what I can say. I mean, it's really more. Again, if we think in terms of technological high-tech features, I think it's very difficult that we will achieve a good result in terms of affordability. If we think in terms of different way of designing products, I think we can get there. We can really provide sustainable units, an affordable price, or even low cost for low-cost houses. I think there are some. Yesterday there was a guy who showed a project in Batangas, and I mean they didn't build it yet, but their proposition is to build it at a very affordable price. Let's see if they will be able to do that.
I think when we talk about low cost and green building, we can do it many ways, depending on the technology available, and so on. We sponsor a project, a housing project in Sichuan in China. What we are doing there is, first of all, we get the villages themselves to build their own houses. They are using local material, mud brick, which offer very good insulation value. The engineering and the earthquake resistance is something that we input so that they can be built. But then the costs are really minimal because they are using all local materials.
We have a next question.
Mr. Santiago mentioned a while ago that fly ash is being used in cement. So can you tell more about the fly ash and what percentage of fly ash is in 1 bag of cement?
Actually, the cement now is made of fly ash already, so majority of the percentage is of fly ash already, sir.
What percentage?
So we're talking about 8 to 90%.
Yeah, because the reason why I question it, because our province is hosting the power. So they are producing a lot of fly ash and they are giving us the fly ash. We are helping them to convert into fly ash into cement. So that is 80%. Maybe we could ask for more finished product.
Yes.
Having something.
What's the, sorry, we come from the cement industry. What's the question, Bert? The question is how much fly ash? Right. So normally here in the Philippines, depending on the type of structure, right? So a ready-mix mashing that will probably use about 20% fly ash. But truly, alternative materials like that, we position it as a sustainable way of building because you use less clinker, which emits more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So about
yeah, because we're planning to ask more finished product than giving us 10,000 bucks per month. Because the GN Power, which was the Bataan is hosting, they're producing a lot of fly ash that was given to the cement company.
so you're supplying fly ash.
No, they are the GN Power.
GN Power, power plant is supplying.
Thank you.
This pertains to the sustainability of affordable housing. I'm just asking about the China's point of view, because as we construct affordable housing, we are creating lower cost of housing component. How about the durability of this housing component at lower cost? That this component of housing itself can sustain the effect of climate change, that like a strong wind and typhoon, that might hit structure. Because as you were saying a while ago, from steel to aluminum, that's a big difference between the strength of the steel and the aluminum. And changing or deviating to other low-cost materials as a component of this affordable housing. Thus, the durability and strength of this affordable housing can sustain the effect of climate change of strong wind and typhoon that's made it structure.
Yes, sir. The main purpose of design is safety, serviceability, and durability. So as a designer, sir, during first stages of the design, we are considering materials that would and can withstand these external forces, like the wind, earthquake, or something. So I guess having to replace a different structural system in lieu of a conventional one, we still do these innovations and continuous study with regards how these materials could resist such lateral forces coming from earthquake or wind.
Good morning, everyone. I am an architect from Cebu. I have a few residential projects there, some officials. And then I would just ask your thoughts on we have lots of factors that we need to consider. Affordable housing, the name itself is affordable. It's like one of our principles you said, it depends on the location price can be called affordable masses for majority of the people can purchase it. So, first of all, affordable housing, let's say in the urban context, if you're living in the city, majority of the masses live in the slums because they can't afford housing, right? So, what the private developers do is they purchase lots outside of the city area to be cheaper, so that they can build houses to be affordable. So the problem comes next is the transportation of these workers. So why would they move out of the city? In fact, they can't travel back to the city to find jobs. So the next problem is the job creation outside. Next comes into mind is we have standards like, for a developer. You need to develop 20% socialist housing if you develop for the higher end houses, right? So 20% is a backlog for the country. How can we accommodate that? The ratio also of the land use, let's say a subdivision has 30% for roads and 70% for the houses. The quality of the sizes of the houses are really that small. The sizes of the lots are really that small. How can we're putting them in a very tight space? What the social implications? Where can the children play? Where the green spaces? Our standards are really that strict. So, what are your thoughts on this? How can we? I hope we have some people in the government who can pass regulations. All I heard so far is we hope the government will do this, will do that. But so far, the ball is in the hand of the private developers, and we are forced to. How can we balance between profit and providing the socialized housing that we need?
It's a very complicated question. I will try to answer it. I mean, as Tony has mentioned earlier, really, we need to find a better way of cooperation between the private sector and government. We talk about subsidized housing, we talk about affordable housing, as if it is something that is a free good given to the society. In modern capitalist society, that really is not a sustainable solution. I mean, even with philanthropists, government, there's only so much money that they can spend. That they have to, get it from a higher tax rate, or they need to find other revenue. Again, for the private developer, it's really the dilemma. I mean, in any market, if there are demands, then the private entrepreneur usually will try to fill that demand, but not in affordable housing. Why? The market structure is not being framed correctly, in the sense that nobody can constantly and in long term lose money on projects. Therefore, I think Tony actually come to a very clever way where government, through rezoning, through releasing the potential of land use, could actually find a balanced way for private participation, in the sense that land potential or the potential of density could be increased, where then the part of the benefit could be returned to society in the form of social housing, affordable housing, etc. Again, it's a big exercise, it's a change of mindset. We need to acknowledge that for private sector involvement, they need to make profit, or they could be able to sustain in the business.
No, I'm not an expert about the regulations in terms of socialized housing in the Philippines. What I can say is that maybe Philippines should also learn from good results done by other countries in terms of socialized housing, like in the Netherlands, in Singapore, and in other places.
I think another part of the question was, or maybe another point that was made, was about the quality of life and the quality of the projects themselves, and whether we can afford to make them anything better really than very densely packed boxes. No? So are there ways of making life better, and of making the habitats better when the land is so scarce and when money is tight? Is it a design?
Yeah, from my point of view, it's possible, but I would like to. The question raised a very important point. I would say problem is that it's mobility. Again, when we talk about sustainability, we think that we achieve sustainability only with one project, but again, it's not like that. From my point of view, we can achieve a more sustainable society, let's say, is if only we can work in a cross-functional management, which means, again, social, economic, and environmental sustainability. One of these points without the others is not, it doesn't make sense to me. So I think it's possible doing a different master plan, to provide a better quality of life. But again, I know that there are several restrictions, so I don't think the solution is behind the corner. I think that we need a lot of work between private sector and government.
Is there anyone here from the public sector that might want to give their point of view? Oh no, we are just wondering if there's anyone from the public sector who might want to give also the point of view of how we can face this challenge of interfacing between private sector developers and government policy in creating this more holistic solution to delivering good quality, low-cost housing. Or we can raise it again.
Is there already an existing turntable here in the Philippines wherein the public and private stakeholders, when it comes to sustainability for affordable housing, or is there already an existing one here that actually can be the
like a venue for public and private to meet? Is anyone aware of anything?
What's your question, sir?
Can you repeat the question?
Here in the Philippines, is there already an existing turntable, like people from the real estate developer who's into sustainability can sit down with, let's say, the National Housing Authority or government agencies which actually takes care of the housing requirements of the Philippines, and now the sustainability element. So I'm wondering whether, is there already an existing one?